The introduction went, my name is Ricky Eckhart. I am the Industrial IT Cybersecurity Manager for ExxonMobil. This is a fairly new organization. We're about 24 months old. Our purpose is to leverage all the cyber-relevant data that we harvest from within an ICS environment and around the perimeter of the ICS environment to enhance our cyber investigations specific to these industrial facilities. So at ExxonMobil, we have facilities that range from unconventional upstream out in the West Texas area, conventional upstream facilities like LNG, deep water, those types. Our midstream facilities, which would include our pipeline, loop operations and blending facilities, our fuels terminals, and then all of our refineries and chemical plants. So the entire spectrum from an oil and gas perspective. So the focus here is going to be on our journey around protecting the perimeter of all those industrial assets. So I always start off these presentations with a theme of balance. So you hear in these conferences, just like ARC, a lot of discussion around digital transformation. I personally don't like that term. I think it's all about the creation of business value, whether that's through digital tools or other services and capabilities that we can deploy to generate business value. It's incumbent upon us to generate that business value because that's why we're in the oil and gas industry, is to generate shareholder return, to generate profits. We have to balance that out from a cybersecurity perspective. We need to enable the business value generation, but in a very cyber secure way. If we tip the balance all towards business value, then we can compromise the acquisition and sustainment of that value if we don't have the right cybersecurity posture. Conversely, if we only focus on cyber, then we're not going to capture the value that's best for the corporation. So just maintain this theme of balance as we go through my presentation. The other item I wanted to touch on before I get into the specific area around the cyber perspective is another theme that you hear at these conferences is IT-OT convergence. I like to think about it as IT-OT collaboration. We have some very distinct functions within ExxonMobil: operations, engineering, and IT. And we simplify that for the purposes of these conferences, but we need to respect each of these functional groups' strengths and capabilities and collaborate together to deliver solutions and services that can enhance the posture of cybersecurity for our industrial assets. Each of these functions has a critical role to play. Operations is the owner of the risk. They develop the business requirements that we need to focus on. Our engineering group, they have the engineering standards in that ICS cyber and safety lens of some of the consequences associated with industrial cybersecurity events. And then our IT department has a lot of knowledge around enterprise type technology and scalable cybersecurity capabilities. When you bring these functions together and align on common objectives and a mission, great things can happen for the corporation. I have many examples where we're not there yet in my company, but what I'm going to talk about today is a great example of these organizations coming together, aligning on common objectives, and a great outcome was achieved. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay. So the challenge that I want to highlight in my presentation is really about this theme of remote access. So there was a good panel discussion yesterday. BASF, Dow, Shell, ExxonMobil was on there, and they were talking about remote access, but from the lens of many, many different use cases. My focus is really going to be around three dimensions: stranded data, remote access of third parties needing persistent access into an ICS environment, and how that led to our need to evolve our perimeter detection capabilities. So I was just chatting with someone earlier, and from a stranded data perspective, again, you hear a lot about digital transformation, unleashing that data. There's multiple ways that you can do that. We saw a very high proliferation of wireless sensors coming into our facilities that we needed to secure the connectivity around. Very important from a business value perspective to unleash that data, get it out of the ICS, but we needed to focus in on how do we do that securely and sustainably. The next item that really spiked during COVID was third-party remote access into our ICS environments. So especially within our upstream facilities where they could be very remote, and historically we would fly people in, OEMs, suppliers, third parties, et cetera. We couldn't do that anymore. We had to come up with a way to enable that third-party access without bringing them into the facility to introduce risk to our very critical operators. Also, there was a significant business value generation because now we're not flying people in on helicopters to deep water assets. So these were the use cases that really started to formalize our approach to enhancing the perimeter detection capabilities around the ICS. So our architecture, this was simplified by my legal department a few times. So this is what we get to share with you. So I'll talk through it and hopefully provide the appropriate level of context. So our architecture was really focused on, again, enabling visibility around the perimeter. And there's two primary dimensions that I'll highlight today. Number one is something that we're all very familiar with, the level 3, level 4 firewall, the network control point that separates the enterprise environment from an ICS environment. The other dimension, which I'm going to focus more on, is what we call external network connections. And this is any external network connection coming in from the internet to an ICS environment. And again, that could be persistent third-party access. It could be to flow data out of an ICS environment to a third party, but it's external to the ICS coming in from the outside world, so an untrusted connection. So the focus was, how do we enable the appropriate level of visibility, specifically, again, around these external network connections? Historically, what our sites would do is they would leverage standalone firewalls that they would purchase, they would configure, they would deploy. Now we have no visibility into that firewall. We don't know the integrity of that firewall configuration. We don't know if the firewall is accidentally bypassed in case there was some troubleshooting taking place. So we said we want to have centrally managed and monitored firewalls for these very critical external network connections, because southbound of that firewall is our high consequence ICS environment, whether that's a SCADA system, a DCS, a PLC, could be some flow meters that we just need to connect into to send data to another third party. But we need to make sure that the integrity and the resiliency of those network control points are continuously managed and monitored. So the fleet of firewalls that we began to deploy for this specific use case are now centrally managed and monitored by my organization. The other item that we wanted to enable was to take advantage of some of the features of next-gen firewalls. So IDS, IPS capabilities. So we get more visibility on detection and even blocking certain traffic on the firewall. Because again, high consequence events are resident southbound of the firewall. So we want to take advantage of those enhanced features of these next-gen firewalls. The other item is getting very granular in how we instrument the rules and the policies on these firewalls. So from a next-gen firewall perspective, we can get all the way into layer 7 policies. So it's not just IP and port. We can actually focus in on the application layer and restrict that traffic to absolutely the minimum that needs to traverse the firewall to facilitate the business use case. So we wanted to go very deep from a security perspective, and going back to that chart with the collaboration bubbles, leveraging some of our network security experts on the IT side to really help our engineering and our operations partners make sure that these firewalls were protecting the critical assets that they were intended to protect. And the final item, and this which is what dictated the technology vendor that we chose for this endeavor, we needed the firewalls to have OT protocol awareness. So a lot of these connections depend on Modbus over TCP type connectivity. So we needed the firewall vendor to have OT protocol awareness. When we started this journey, there weren't a lot of those vendors out there. It's improved quite a bit since then. But at the beginning, we were very focused on what are the business requirements set out to us by the operations group? What are the engineering standards we need to comply with from an ICS and safety perspective? And what are the IT technology capabilities that we can bring to bear to solve this problem for the business? And that facilitated us identifying the right technology vendor to partner with and us being able to deploy these across the world. So protecting the perimeter of the ICS. Why are we doing this? Obviously, we want to improve our detection capabilities around that perimeter. We want to increase the number of endpoints that we're monitoring because that feeds into our cyber investigations. We can look for anomalous detection on the firewall that are internet facing and have, again, a very critical ICS component on the south side of it. So with the deployment of these capabilities, we did improve our visibility. We can start to enhance our detection capabilities around the perimeter, which feeds into more insightful investigations from an ICS perspective. So the final reason that we did this, again, going back to my balance chart, we're doing this to enable business value. Cybersecurity should not be perceived as a barrier, but in my opinion, as an enabler of business value and a sustainment mechanism for business value. Our business needed more third-party connectivity. They needed to send data to third parties. We had to come together with the operations, engineering, and IT function to facilitate the best solution to solve that problem to drive business value for the company. At the end of the day, our business is in the identification, acquisition, refinement, and distribution of various hydrocarbon products. So we need to enable our business to function in the most secure, reliable, and sustainable way. So from this lens, we were able to achieve that by improving the capabilities of perimeter detection and enabling our business to take advantage of all these new use cases. So that's all I have. Very happy to take questions at the end. Thank you.